The Simple Life, Chapter 5, entitled The Simple Duty. When we speak to children on a subject which seems importunate to them, they will show you above on the roofs a pigeon which is feeding its young, or down in the street some driver who is abusing his horse. Sometimes also they mischievously ask you one of those great questions which put the minds of the parents to torture. And all that is to draw the attention from the painful subject. I fear we are but big children in the face of duty, and that when that is in question, we too seek subterfuges to distract our minds. The first subterfuge is to demand of oneself if there is one general duty, or if that word does not cover one of the numerous illusions of our ancestors. For, in point of fact, duty presupposes liberty. And the question of liberty leads us even into the regions of metaphysics. How can we speak of duty as long as the grave problem of free will is not resolved? Theoretically, there is nothing there to which we can object. And if life were a theory, if we were here to elaborate the complete system of the universe, it would be absurd to occupy ourselves with duty before having demonstrated liberty, fixing its conditions and limits. But life is not a theory. On this point of practical morals, as on all others, life has distanced the theory, and there is no reason to believe that it will ever cede it the precedence. This liberty, relative I admit, like all that we know besides, this duty whose existence we question, is not any the less the base of all the judgments we bring on us and on our fellow beings. We treat each other as responsible, to a certain degree, for our actions and gestures. The maddest theorist, as soon as he gets outside of his theory, feels no scruples in approving or disapproving the acts of others, to work against his enemies, to appeal to the generosity and the justice of those whom he would dissuade from an unworthy action. They can no more rid themselves of the feeling of moral obligation than that of time and space, and that we must resign ourselves to press onward before we know how to define that space which we cross, and the time which measures our movements. We must also submit to the moral obligation before having touched its deep roots. The moral law dominates man, whether he respects it or transgresses it. Look at everyday life. Each one is ready to throw the stone at him who does not accomplish a self-evident duty, even if he must allege that he has not yet reached the philosophic certainty. Each one will tell him, and be 1,000 times right in telling him, "Sir, one is a man above all things. Pay in your manhood first, then do your duty as a citizen, as father, as son, and return to the course of your meditations after." At the same time, let us be understood, we do not wish to hinder anyone from his philosophical investigations of the scrupulous search for the moral foundations. No thought which leads man toward those grave studies can be useless or indifferent. We only defy the thinker to be able to wait until he has found these foundations to do an act of humanity, honesty, or dishonesty, courage, or cowardice. And above all, we desire to formulate an answer good enough to oppose all the malignant persons who have never been philosophers, to offer to ourselves, when we wish to invoke our doubtful state of philosophy, to justify our practical failures. But just that is one a man. Before all theories, positive or negative, on duty, one has for a firm rule to conduct himself like a man. There is no issue from there. But they will know the resources of the human heart little if they count on the effect of a similar answer. It may even be without answer, but in spite of that, it cannot hinder other questions from arising. The number of our pretexts to lead us from our duty is as great as the sands of the sea or the stars in heaven. Therefore, we retrench the obscure duty, the difficult duty, and the contradictory duty. Those are surely words which evoke painful souvenirs. To be a dutiful man and doubt his road, to feel along in the dark, to see himself delivered to contrary solicitations of different duties, or again, to find himself facing a gigantic duty, a crushing one which surpasses our forces, what is harder? And these things happen. We would not deny nor contest that there is a tragic element in certain events and heartrendings in certain lives. Still, it is rare that duty has to throw light across such a conflict of circumstances. It must spring forth from the mind like the lightning from the clouds. Such formidable shocks are exceptional. So much the better if we bear up well when they do come. But if no one thinks it surprising that the oaks are uprooted by the tempest, or a traveler should stumble in the night on an unknown road, or that a soldier should be conquered when he is taken between two fires, no one should condemn, without appeal, those who have been beaten in these almost superhuman struggles. To succumb under the number and the obstacles has never been a disgrace. Therefore, I shall offer my arms to those who entrench themselves behind the impregnable rampart of obscure, complex, and contradictory duty. For today, it is not that which occupies my mind. It is the simple duty. I might almost say the easy duty that I wish to speak of to them. We have each year 3 or 4 high holidays and many ordinary days. Like them, there are a few very great and very obscure combats to fight. But by the side of this, there are the multitude of simple and evident duties. Now, while that in the great encounters our attitude is generally sufficient, it is precisely in the small occasions that we are seen to weaken. Without fearing that I shall be drawn by a paradoxical form from my thought, I shall then declare, the essential is to fulfill the simple duty, to consecrate oneself to elementary justice. In general, those who lose their souls lose them not because they fail to do difficult duties and do not accomplish impossibilities, but because they neglect their simple duty. Let us illustrate this truth by examples. He who tries to enter among the lower and humble ones of society will not be long in discovering great physical and moral miseries. The nearer he reaches that life, the more wounds he discovers. And at last, the world of miserable ones seems to him like a vast black creation before which the individual, with his poor means of solace, appears reduced to impotence. It is true that he feels anxious to hasten, but at the same time he thinks, what is the use? Evidently the case is most agonizing. Some decide the question by doing nothing, from despair. They remain, therefore, sterile, yet not from the lack of pity nor of good intentions. They are wrong. Often a man has not the means to do good by the wholesale, but that is no reason why he should not at retail. So many people fail to do anything because, according to them, there is too much to do. They need to be recalled to the simple duty. This duty is this. In the case now occupying our attention, that everyone, according to his resources, his leisure, and his capacities, should form friendships among these disinherited ones. There are people who, by the exercise of a little willpower, manage to introduce themselves into the circles of the ministers, or to wiggle into the society of the chiefs of the state. Why, then, could not all form acquaintance with the poor people, become friendly with those toilers who are in need of necessaries? Once know a few families with their histories, their antecedents, and their difficulties, you could be of great utility in doing simply what you could, and in practicing fraternity under the form of moral and material assistance. You would have, it is true, attacked but one little corner, but you would have done your best, and perhaps drawn one other to do his best also. In acting this way, instead of only stating that there exists much misery in the world, sullen hatred, disunion, vice, you would have introduced a little good into it. And however small the number of good wills like yours becomes, the good will grow and evil will diminish. But even if you are left alone to do what you have done, you have witnessed that you have done the only reasonable thing, the simple and childlike duty which was given you. Now, in doing that, you have discovered one of the secrets of right living. Human ambition dreams of vast projects, but it is rarely given us to do such great things. And even the most rapid and certain successes are always the outcome of patient preparation. Faithfulness in small things is the base of everything grand that is accomplished. We forget that too often. Still, if there is a truth necessary to know, it is that, above all, in the dangerous and painful moments of existence, one can save himself in case of shipwreck on a broken beam, an oar, or a piece of plank. On the tumultuous ocean of life, when everything seems to be broken to atoms, remember that one only of those poor atoms may become our plank of safety. The demoralization consists in despising these pieces. You have been ruined, or you have a great grief, or perhaps you have just seen destroyed before your eyes the fruit of long labor. It is impossible to reconstruct your fortune, to resuscitate your dead, or save your lost labor. And before the irreparable, your arms fall. Then you neglect to care for your person, to keep your house, or to watch over your children. That is pardonable, and how well we understand it. But that is very dangerous. To let yourself go transforms the evil into a worse one. You who believe that you have nothing more to lose, you will for that lose that which yet remains to you. Gather the fragments of your goods. Have for what remains a scrupulous care, and soon that little will console you. Accomplished effort comes to our aid as neglected effort turns against us. If there remains but one branch to which you can cling, cling to that branch. And if you are left alone to defend a cause which seems lost, do not throw down your arms to join the fugitives. On the morrow, after the deluge, a few isolated persons repopulate the earth. The future sometimes seems to rest on one head alone, as it happens that a life hangs but on a thread. Inspire yourself with history and nature. Each will teach you in their laborious evolutions that calamities like prosperity can come from the least causes, that it is not wise to neglect details, and above all, one must know how to wait and to recompense. In speaking of the simple duty, I cannot refrain from thinking of military life, and of the examples that it offers to the combatants of that great struggle which is life. He who once his army is beaten abstains from brushing his garments, polishing his guns, and observing his discipline, understands but imperfectly his duty as a soldier. To what use, you may say? To what use? Are there not many ways of being beaten? Would it be a matter of indifference to add discouragement, disorder, a general breaking up to the misery of defeat? No. We must never forget that the least act of energy in these terrible moments is like a light in the darkness. It is a sign of hope. Each one understands at once that all is not lost. During the disastrous retreat of 1813 to 1814, in the middle of winter, while it must have been almost impossible to maintain any sort of appearance, I do not know what general it was, presented himself one morning to Napoleon I, in fine condition and freshly shaved. Seeing him thus in the midst of the general breaking up, as carefully dressed as if on review, the emperor said, "General, you are a brave man." End of part 1 of chapter 5, The Simple